This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 944. Great Porsche. Brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you. Hey, it's Josh Flanagan. I am here with my co-host, Conor Kilpatrick.
Hello.
Conor, have you ever had a Porsche 944?
Who hasn't, really?
Right. Could you identify the Porsche 944?
No.
No, okay. What about the Porsche 928?
I think only the 911.
Yeah. Although the 911 is not always the 911 now. There's all these other numbers, and I don't really understand it. Like, there's model numbers of the 911. Anyway, I'm poor, so it doesn't matter. This is Pick of the Week, episode 944. When I was a kid, I thought, maybe someday I'll get a Porsche. And now as an adult, you're like, you're such a stupid kid, Josh. I say that all the time. I just tell myself, you're such a stupid kid. And then I cry, but then I feel better. Every week, one of us picks the book they like the best from their stack of comics. We call that the Pick of the Week. We will talk about that comic book. We will talk about other books from the week. There is a patron pick. There is listener mail. There is a heat wave. This will be fun. This could be sticky. I a little bit want to hear Conor just slip off his chair. Just
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hot. I turned the air conditioning off 20 minutes ago when we started talking, when I thought we'd start the show, but we didn't. I could have kept the air on. It feels demonstrably warm. And we're a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the show.
All right, well, here's your spoiler warning. There will be complaining.
Yes. Yes.
Exercise caution and keep cool out there. Learn from his lesson. It's not healthy what he's doing, but he's doing it for you. He's also got the pick, which was for you.
That's right. And the pick of the week this week was Plastic Man No More.
Or Eel.
Book 1 from DC Comics and Black Label, written by Christopher Cantwell, art by Alex Linz, who was on the pick of the week 2 weeks ago. Also, other kind of art by Jacob Edgar. And it's Marcelo Maiolo's week. He colored like 3 of the books we're talking about this week. Becca Carey on letters. So when they first announced this, and I saw the announcement, I saw Christopher Cantwell doing Plastic Man. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then it was like, something happens to Plastic Man and he starts to come apart. And there was like, discussions of body horror. And I'm not into body horror.
It's true.
I did not like Immortal Hulk for that reason. I do not like post-Immortal Hulk where they keep showing the body horror of him transforming. I don't like it.
I mean, you've been consistent on this point.
Yeah. So I said, all right, I'm at least going to check it out because I really like Christopher Cantwell a lot. I like Alex Linz a lot.
Sure.
And I like Plastic Man. So I'll give the first issue a shot. And I was like halfway through and I was like, oh, fuck, this is really good.
I like how we have both hit a point. We did this last week where we started reading something we liked and then we got mad. Well, because for some reason you didn't want, maybe you thought maybe this would be bad and I won't have to add another book.
Well, it's just that I didn't read a body horror book and I was just like, oh, fuck me. It's because there's not a ton of it. There's a lot of interesting things happening. Now, look, this is a Black Label comic. There's a couple of things in here I didn't like, but they were far outweighed by the things I did, which, we're big fans of Christopher Cantwell's work. I think this is his first DC book. He's very well paired with the lead character. Alex Linz, I thought, was just doing incredible work, and that's a big reason why this is Pick of the Week. I'm just looking through this opening sequence where it's a flashback to when Eel was a jewel robber, and it looks almost a little bit like Riley Rossmo.
Yes, I see that. Absolutely.
And I love how they add the dot pitch overlay shading to it. It really gives it a feel that is not at all similar to what he's doing over at Namor, but still of that same style. I'm looking at the shot, the splash page on page 4 on your digital reader of Eel walking up to the gem store saying, I'm the punchline. I just love everything about this page. From the colors to the art style to the high angle, the fact that it's full of detail, there's trash on the streets, there's cars behind. I just love everything about it. And then the Jacob Edgar art is the art that we see when the Justice League are out on adventures. So you get much more of a poppy Silver Age style when he's amongst the Justice League, which I thought was an interesting choice to show kind of how different his life is when he is fighting crime with these larger-than-life characters versus when he's at home. That was a very interesting decision to make. I didn't love that the Justice League didn't seem to care that he was hurt, which I don't think would ever happen, but you have to sort of buy that conceit for this book.
I had the same thing, is that they were just kind of ignoring him and they were treating him like the punchline, and I decided, all right, this is being played up for dramatic purposes so we can see his point of view. And a lot of times, like the story that somebody else sees isn't what's actually happening, right. But it's very fair for him to feel like that, I think, and I think that's sort of what they were going for. Because
it could be that the reason why the art's different because it's more his memory than it is what's actually happening.
Yeah, exactly. What made me think is that Christopher Cantwell, we used to always say, and we knew him primarily, although I'm starting to forget, but Halt and Catch Fire,
right?
Is the thing that I first knew him from, and that's I forget who the other writer was. It wasn't just him, but we also saw that like when he moved into comics, his thing was high status men,
assholes.
Yeah, and he did that for a while, and he's actually, if you look at the last couple things, he's kind of gotten away from it. This is the opposite of that. This is not that, which is just an interesting thing. Like he had sort of a lane and it switched a little. And it's like Briar's another one that's like that. It's like that's actually a different sort of character and story that he's doing over there. Just a thing I noticed sort of reading this.
If the Justice League were a movie, he'd be the last name on the call sheet.
Mm-hmm.
But they're off to stop Solaris, who has a death ray, and he's pointing it at some people, so Plastic Man makes his body very big to absorb the ray, and so apparently the ray has either undone him at a cellular level or hastened his eventual undoing at a cellular level.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's sort of coming apart, and it starts with his arm, which sort of melts off.
Yeah, his polymer chains are disintegrating. Yeah. And so the thing that makes him quote unquote plastic is being undone. By the way, put that in the ocean. Whatever it is that's causing that to happen, let's solve some problems. Like make some usefulness out of it.
Solaris could be a hero. Go to the garbage patch.
So what I thought was that this was really, really good and well done. And I wouldn't disagree with it from a pick standpoint. I could have made an argument for that.
I had several books that I thought about, and I actually slept on it. I finished these books the day before picking the pick. But I just kept coming back to the Alex Lin's art, which I loved so much.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense. But what I was going to say is that there is a little bit of I don't really want to see the sad sack Plastic Man.
Yeah.
A person who's very funny overcompensating for a self-confidence deficiency, or the fact that, he used to be a bad guy. So he's always going to have some kind of imposter syndrome, or not a bad guy, but, he was a robber. But then to sort of take it one step further and have him like be a kind of a deadbeat dad and be like, yeah, it's the Justice League. I don't have time to be a dad. And I was just like, this is getting farther away from how I want to see a superhero. And it's, again, it's not like I don't want to think about these issues or deal with them. It's just like, is this the medium that I want it to be? And there are actually several comics, and we're not going to talk about all of them, but comics where I was like, this is really well done. It is a high level of craft, and I see what they're doing, and they're accomplishing what they're trying for, but I can't say I enjoy it. Now, I'm not saying that about this book. I thought that in the middle, but by the time I got to the end, I was like, that's really good, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But at a certain level, I was like, I don't want to see Deadbeat Dad Plastic Man. It's not a thing I want.
I think what pulled it out for me was that it literally pulled itself out at the end, where it goes from sad in the middle to silly, where he can't see a doctor because he's basically a man. What's plastic? What's a regular doctor going to do? So he goes to see what kind of scientist is it?
It's like a plastic scientist, basically.
Yeah, that's what this says on the business card. Plastic scientist. So he's like, is there anything we can do? She's like, well, maybe if you were basically in the middle of a giant nuclear explosion, it would fuse your shit back together, or reverse the molecular degradation is another way of saying that. And he's like, okay, so you send a really big nuclear explosion? All right, let's do it. And that's where it kind of, it sort of becomes not silly, but kind of wacky again. So now I want to see how that's going to go.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. I can't find the second thing I didn't like. Maybe it was only the Justice League thing. I can't remember. Oh, I know what it was. And this is also a minor thing, but at one point he is grumbling with the Justice League while he's at home, and he's talking about all the members, and he says like Wonder Woman's this, and Green Lantern's this, and Superman's this, and he said Barry's a jock, and I was like, Barry is not a jock. Barry was a comic reading science nerd.
Yeah.
He's the opposite of that mischaracterization of Barry Allen, but that's fine.
Yeah, but again, like we're seeing this guy, this version of this character has like an idea about how things work around. I'm doing my best. I'm trying to make sense of it. But
I also found it funny where the hand comes out of the sewers and becomes homeless. Like it takes some newspapers, wraps it around himself, sits in the alley.
This gross plastic drip baby.
Like a little person. Or a little penis, depending on how you look at it from the angle you're looking at it.
Not in the Black Label book. Not now, not ever.
So I just want to say I read this sort of begrudgingly because, again, the body horror stuff is not my thing, but I was very impressed with the level of craft and how engaged I was in the story. And really just Alex Lin's is becoming someone now that I really look forward to seeing work from.
Sure.
Really terrific. And look at these variant covers. Look at the Crimson one and the Michael Red one. Just terrific.
Lin's is like a leveling up.
Yeah.
It was Breyer, I think. He did a lot. I looked him up. And there's a lot of books that he did that I hadn't put together. But I think that I was probably Breyer was the first thing that I noticed. And he worked with Cantwell on that too.
Yeah.
But there were some others. He did that Hellcat book.
Right. We like that. Yeah.
Not too long ago. Yeah, it was good. It's always good to see somebody up and coming, get a shot at bigger things and then just really shine.
Yep.
That's always really satisfying.
There was a period of time where Scarlett #4 was the pick of the week.
No, can't be.
Kelly Thompson, Marco Ferrari. This is issue 4 of 5. I almost couldn't even put my finger on it, which is a problem when you're in our business. But I finished it and I thought that was terrific because I didn't really love issue 3. I liked 3. It was probably my least favorite of the 3 at that point. But 4 brought it back. I thought the fights were terrific. Storm Shadow was fun. I really liked the relationship between Scarlett and Jinx. I thought they were adorable together. And then there was like, a big reveal at the end. I just thought it was, as an issue, it worked really well. It was like a single story she's telling a whole story here, but I thought this mini story within the big story was really well told. From an action, character, and plot standpoint, all of it worked really well.
I'm going to be honest with you, is that you put it on this list, and I thought, I don't know what I would have had to talk about with this. Not that I don't remember it. It's good. It's the thing. I don't know. I feel like I want to learn the next thing that happens now. I feel like I want to know how it ties into the other books. But there were some really nice moments. The relationship between Jinx and Scarlett is great, and how they talk to each other. They spend a lot of time in a room just talking, but then they even that out with lots of good ninja fighting. Oh, there was the thing where I can't believe we're still letting a ninja wear high heels.
Makes it even more impressive.
I know. I saw them at one point and I was like, that's just weird. And then I thought maybe whatever. And then they focused on them. So it's like clearly on purpose. Like the front have those toe claws for climbing, I guess. But the heel, it just doesn't make sense.
It's a weapon,
I guess.
I have to admit, when I saw on page 32 that, the ultimate thing they were trying to get was this giant crate. It was almost human size. I thought, oh my God, is Snake Eyes in that crate? Just because we've had a lot of issues with G.I. Joe. Energon G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
No Snake Eyes.
You're very right.
I thought, is he going to be in that crate?
We're spending time at the Rishikage, and I mean, it's got to be near.
It's not him. It's a sword. It's the sword of life.
I did like that they set up the ninja group as she was like, they're the bad guys. It's like, maybe, maybe
right.
not. And you're like, okay, that makes sense because, Storm Shadow's always been sort of ambiguous in that way. Then he gets the sword and you're kind of like, oh, that seems actually kind of bad that he has it because he's way into that.
He wants to rule everyone with the sword. Yeah, I like that a lot. She's like, they're they can do bad things, but also there's worse things coming that they can help with. There's just a lot of little things in this issue that I quite enjoyed.
I feel like all of these ones, they read really fast.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking through it. It's not like there's no words, but the action scenes are really good and they do tend to move fast. And they're also spread over many pages. Like you live in an action scene for a while in this book, which is kind of cool.
So I'm very curious what you thought of the Ultimates number 4.
We have the intricately depicted multiple timeline story going on across 4 panels that goes through the whole thing, each with sort of parallel action as we learn how, and I don't know that I fully understand, but the Doom in this world, the main world where, is it Tony? Is Iron Lad?
Iron Lad. The Doom of this Ultimate universe, yeah.
Okay, so the whatever that universe is, where the sort of main fight against the Maker is happening.
The Ultimate universe.
He was a Reed.
Yeah, he's always been Reed.
I didn't remember. But either way, he had been tortured by the Maker at some point, apparently to turn him into Doom. I'm checking with you that these things make sense.
Yeah, I think I was impressed with Dennis Camp's, and this is Phil Noto on guest art, which I thought was very well placed for this type of story.
It's really weird. I convinced myself that this was Jonathan Hickman for some reason.
He's only doing Spider-Man.
No, I get it, but it just was so intricate that I thought, or like, this is like a Tom King. Who the hell is this guy? This Dennis Camp.
Each panel is 4 horizontal pages. None of those words are right. One of those words is right. 4 horizontal
They're
panels.
horizontal panels, yes.
It's way too early in the show for my brain to melt. And each panel tells a story. So the top panel is like younger Reed, like he starts as a kid, then he goes through college, and then his job meeting Sue and Johnny and falling in love, and etc. And then the second panel, sort of takes it from there. They're in the ship that goes into space, and then all that stuff happens. The third panel seems to be him older as Doom watching all this on like TV.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing basically the action from the panel above, and he's reacting to it. And then the fourth panel is him talking to Iron Lad in the present. You could conceivably just read across each page and go back, but you would probably lose something, but you could do it.
Yeah, the panels do refer to each other. I mean, it's pretty well done.
I just have a hard time like you sort of grasping everything that happened and the order and the meaning behind it, which is a lot of things to not grasp.
Yeah.
It seems like in this world, there was no Fantastic Four. They all sort of died in the trip, or they died later.
Yeah, this reads Cosmic Ray trip didn't go well. And also it was predicated on Sue's dad wanting to cancel it, and they steal the ship basically. And as a result,
well, that's kind of what happened in the regular Marvel universe, isn't it?
Right, but they all die except for Reed, I think.
Right.
Or somebody ended up in the hospital, but it was bad. And so the dad is like, you killed 2 of my kids,
Yeah. And Ben committed suicide.
Yeah, in a huge pit of orange rock.
Yeah.
And then that Reed is the one who is taken and tortured by the Maker, who really is the most evil character. I got,
Yeah.
who's that? Who made, is that Miller?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I could definitely be wrong, but I think it is.
Okay. It's been such a long time. Like, really, that character has been living in the background of sort of everything for like almost 2 decades.
It seems like this Reed is not at all Mr. Fantastic, meaning he has no abilities, and so he's just super smart and angry and doom. But he's also been obsessed with...
Is he the same Reed from the top panel? He's the same Reed.
That's the same Reed. Yeah. And so he's been trying to, I would say, recreate the Fantastic Four, but they never existed in the first place. But he's got these mice that he's trying to turn, and he's turning into the Fantastic Four. Which is a little strange because if they never existed in the first place, how does he know to do that, or why does he want to do that? Like that was a little confusing.
There's multiversal constants. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think it is important here to mention that what we have here is a chicken situation where there is good Nodo.
Yeah, really.
And then there's not great Nodo. This is excellent Nodo.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of his pieces that he did of the Fantastic Four, and they're always some of the best ones.
Well, he's well suited to that style. He's kind of retro. He likes doing the 60s style characters, but also there's no punching here. It's really all just action amongst people talking and emotions, and then he sort of excels at that stuff.
I don't think his strength is storytelling. And because of the format of this, he was confined within a certain shape,
which he's great at.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think that constraint actually brought out strengths in him. I'm totally speculating, but I've seen, pages where the pages don't look great. They don't sort of flow together. But here, it's like, these are the rules. You stick with them. He just knocked it out of the park.
That was a good issue. I just had a little trouble following or grasping certain things, and certain other things were confusing. But I thought I was impressed by the effort and how mostly it held together.
So Tom King finished 2 miniseries this week. One was Animal Pound number 5, which I'm not going to talk about, and The Penguin number 12, which we are going to talk about because I read 12 issues of it, and I think it was really interesting. But my question to you, which is my question to myself, is what did you think of the ending? Did you feel satisfied by that story?
I have to, from my own mental well-being, consider this an Elseworlds story.
Absolutely.
I cannot consider this to be something that takes place in continuity. I have a lot of silly, dumb, old man pet peeves I talk about on the show. I'm sure people can write them all down. But I feel very strongly about the sanctity of the secret identity, especially for Batman. Mm-hmm. And to have the Penguin and all of his people apparently just to blithely know that he's Bruce, I feel like is a huge issue with the world and the character.
I 100% just consider this its own story.
Yeah, no, I have to. And then the whole thing where like Batman seems kind of dumb, and the whole thing's like the Penguins outsmarts him at every turn and sort of owns him, for lack of a better term.
He is much more human in this.
Yeah.
Which is kind of attractive in a certain way. The Help remains to be just a fantastic new character.
Ultimately, I enjoyed the miniseries. We talked about so many of the issues on the show. I thought it was really interesting. If this had just been another Tom King character piece set outside of continuity, then I might have liked it more. But I get that, whatever, it doesn't matter. Everything's in continuity or out of continuity depending on what you care about. But it just didn't seem to jive with the rest of the Batman world in any way, shape, or form. Putting that aside,
right?
I thought it was good. It's not a surprising ending. The Penguin outsmarts everybody, kills his kids, and is back on top.
I think it was a very good story in terms of establishing a version of the Penguin who actually is a threatening menace, where you're like, well, why is this goofy character the crime boss of everything? And here, like, let's see if we can make this character into somebody scary, into a real villain, that's worth being Batman's opponent. And I think that succeeded, that was really well done. I can't tell you I really enjoyed it. It's another one of those things I was kind of impressed by it, and I enjoyed parts
More
of
an
it.
Intellectual exercise for you than anything?
I mean, a little, because it wasn't really like, oh, what's going to happen next? So if you take another Tom story in the Human Target, issue to issue, there's a mystery. And this wasn't a mystery. That's not the point. But there was like, what's going to happen next? I'm going to turn the page. It's the same thing with Adam Strange, with, whatever. Whereas this was, like, let's watch this character and the horrible things that he does and how he'll get out of this stuff. And also, this is what everybody else thinks of him.
Right.
And that's not bad, but I don't feel like there was necessarily a plot driving it. Like, it was just, he was going to get revenge on his enemies, and that's how it happened.
I think you might be selling it a little short just in terms of...
I think I might be.
How much we talked about the first third of it, where it was like him on his way back to Gotham, rebuilding his army with the Help and the wife or the girlfriend, whoever she is, and those other soldiers. It got a little less interesting for me when it sort of the flashbacks to him as a young guy coming up. That was sort of the middle third. And then it came back to him retaking Gotham in the final third. That's not exactly the numbers, but that's kind of how it was structured. We liked the first third a lot.
I mean, I think I kind of lost the thread to a certain extent.
I think the middle kind of took some of the air out of it because we were
Maybe
really driving towards him showing up back in Gotham with his ragtag army to retake. And again, these are all horrible people, but to retake being head of the crime in Gotham. And then we stopped. We slammed the brakes on. We changed artists. We went back in time. We watched him from the ground up as a dishwasher in the club to taking over. How he even uses Batman for his own means. And then we come back to the present. So like it was a little wonky in terms of how the structure impacted the storytelling, but you couldn't do it the other way because it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
It would be a different story if you did it. I mean, it also would have been better if he had interspersed and I don't want to rewrite stuff, but interspersed the flashbacks throughout the coming back to Gotham bits. So it wouldn't have been such a slamming onto the brakes for 3 issues or whatever it was. But we did really quite enjoy those beginning issues.
I enjoyed reading every issue of this.
But I get it. I didn't love this when it finished.
Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed reading it, but I also didn't like when a new issue came out, it was more like, well, this will be interesting. You know what I mean? It was more like that than, ooh, that was really fun. It wasn't fun.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Like, I liked reading every issue. And so if someone asked me, how was the Penguin? I'm like, it was pretty good. If you like the Penguin, you'll enjoy it. So it wasn't bad. But I finished it. I think that was like a middle of the tier Tom King.
Which is real good.
Yeah. Still better than most.
Yes, absolutely. It looked great. I really liked the way that they drew the Penguin.
Yeah.
Just realistic enough that you could kind of buy this version of the character. This sort of sophisticate who's kind of weird looking, and like you start to you respect him a little bit, and then everybody else is like, he smells like fish. And I don't know, there's a lot of things going on at once. I liked it a lot, but I don't know that I felt terribly resolved or like I'm gonna read it again.
The most important thing though is Marcelo Mayolo also colored it. That's the second time we've seen his name.
Okay.
Hey, do you enjoy this kind of conflicted, nuanced comic book reviewing? Sort of emotional, guilt-ridden? I'm just trying to figure out where we're coming from.
Are you talking about a different thing?
I'm just saying, do you enjoy it as a listener? Do you want to support it? Do you want it to keep going? Do you want to be a patron of the arts?
I feel like you're giving people an option rather than sort of being like, you like this, right?
I'm saying you should, but maybe you really enjoy it. I mean, if you're a fan of this kind of perhaps rambling, not straightforward review, where we're trying to desperately to dig into a hole and find how we feel about something, I think it's interesting. If you want to help support that, keep it going, go to patreon.com/iFanboy. That's where people who really enjoy the show, want to help out, want to contribute, want to keep the lights on, go there. That's how you directly support the show. They have in the past, those people unlocked shows for everybody. So all those other shows we do were all unlocked by the patrons. There's great communities on the Discord server, and there's a Facebook group apparently, and a monthly patron hangout. We just did it a couple weeks ago. It was fun. We just scheduled another one. We look forward to those. You can sign up for yearly memberships at 10% off. You can get tier-exclusive merchandise. And the $5 or higher level, you get a patron power. We'll just talk about that later. And you get the Discord server. And $10 or higher, you get the ad-free feed of the show. If you don't want to hear us talking about our underwear or, mental health, you can do that. And you get to be on the thank you page on the website.
I could talk about my underwear anyway. I know you guys don't want me to talk about my underwear for free, but just I'm
You're giving away content, premium content.
I know.
So head over to patreon.com/iFanboy for all the details. And thank you very much if you're a patron. We appreciate that. And if you're not a patron, please consider being one today. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. And we do appreciate that. iFanboy.threadless.com is our merch store. There are 13 designs there. And we're always having, we aren't because we're not Threadless, but Threadless is always having sales. They just had a Labor Day sale. A bunch of people bought stuff. That was great. I bought a replacement sweatshirt. That was great. That's right. We have to buy our own merch.
Which sweatshirt did you get?
It was a replacement for my wife who needed her Stay Home and Read Comics sweatshirt had got shrunk in the wash.
Nice.
So got a new one. But that's great. We have more designs. We just never find time to work on them. It's just the realities of life. We'll get there. iFanboy.com/support is our digital PayPal tip jar for any eccentric billionaires out there who want to do something funny with their money. I'm not saying all of you are in that category. Maybe one of you is. Like, this would be hilarious. It would be. So think about that. iFanboy.com/Amazon is our general shopping link. And also you can find our Booksplode books on that page. And bookshop.org is our partner. It helps out local bookstores. You click on those links you see on the website. They'll be there, usually on the Booksplode posts. And the order will be fulfilled by a local bookstore. And we all love that because those are the best in the world. And we appreciate all of your support. As we move on to Duck and Cover number 1. Did you read Duck and Cover number 1?
I read Duck and Cover number 1.
From Dark Horse, Scott Snyder and his old pal, Raphael Albuquerque. And also, hey, look, Marcelo Mayolo.
Dang.
So this is probably another one of those Substack books because this is like double-sized, like all of his Dark Horse
like
books.
The last few, which have all been pretty damn good.
And they've all been interesting genre-wise.
Yeah.
They've all been very different. There was the heist one, there was the serial killer one, and now you've got this sort of strange take on Red Dawn mixed with the old Duck and Cover song. And for anyone who is younger than us, in the 50s and 60s, in order to keep everyone calm during a possible Russian nuclear strike, somebody came up with the Duck and Cover, which was the Federal Civil Defense Administration did that. The whole idea was, if you were at school when the missiles were coming, get under your desk and it'll help protect you from the nuclear blast, which of course it wouldn't, but that was just mostly to keep everybody calm. I really liked this. I don't think I loved it, but I really liked it because it was so weird. But I think it all worked together in its weirdness.
I thought that the first half, it was just the story about people in the town. I was 100% into that.
I was like, wow, is he just telling a story of a bunch of kids hanging out? This is great.
So I was like, oh, this is actually just kind of a cool story about interesting people. And then at a certain point, they were talking about the Duck and Cover, and I was like, oh, there has to be a thing. And then I thought maybe it'll just be like the bomb happens and they're dealing with that afterwards. And I was like, no, there's a bigger twist than that. But, as always, it is comics. That's what happens.
Just to spoil the twist, because I liked it a lot for its outlandishness. It almost felt like a Twilight Zone episode where actually ducking and covering when the bombs fall, which they do, does save all these kids into Breakfast Club-esque detention. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a neat little 50s sci-fi thing, right? Yeah. Like actually being under the desks does save them. The people who aren't under the desks don't make it. And it's just whatever is magical about being under the desk works. And then it becomes sort of a Red Dawn situation where the Russians have invaded. And that's sort of the cliffhanger of the issue. It's
not aliens. They're actually Russian robots. So it's just high-end, sci-fi, 50s style sci-fi, where they're sort of it looked great.
Whatever Scott's done rejuvenated his whole creative juices with doing these sort of back to his roots.
Substack was real good for him creatively. I think we can all agree on that.
For sure.
But, at the end of the day, I'm excited to read the next one. I was really pleased with it.
Exceptional X-Men #1 came out this week.
You're on your own.
I'm checking in on all the X-Men books, the new X-Men books. And what I thought was interesting about this was that it was basically not Exceptional X-Men #1, because on the cover you've got Emma Frost and you've got Kitty Pryde and you've got some other X-Men. I don't know who they are. But this entire issue is basically just Kitty Pryde. And by the way, she's back to being Kitty Pryde. I
thought she was Kate on the cover.
No, on the cover she's just there's no words.
I read like the little solicit and they said Kate Pryde. And
right. So in the beginning, you're right. In a little opening thing, it says Kate Pryde is forced. But by the end, somebody calls her Kate and she goes, no, it's Kitty. It's Kitty Pryde. She's back, baby. Like the whole issue is just her, and she meets one of these new mutants from the cover. This girl who is a mutant, and she saves her from getting killed. And then at the end, there's a coda with Emma Frost. But it was just interesting. It was more like a Kitty Pryde single issue or solo book than it was an X-Men team book. But I actually enjoyed it. I haven't traditionally enjoyed stuff from Eve Ewing, but I liked this one. And also Carmen Carnero, she's terrific. I can't remember the book that she did before that I really liked.
I remember the name.
I did, and I liked it. She's really good. Like, I like the pieces. And I actually, when I started reading this, I was like, I'm probably not going to like this that much. I probably won't get past the first issue just because past experience. But by the end of it, I thought, I do want to know what happens next. So,
Captain Marvel?
Was it Captain Marvel? I don't remember, but
Captain Marvel.
It might have been.
Ultimate Spider-Man.
It's probably Captain Marvel.
Spanish.
Yeah.
She's great. I'm looking at her Twitter feed.
Like, oh, no, she's a terrific artist.
She's really good.
Yeah.
She did a couple of Amazing Spider-Mans, I think. Amazing Spider-Man Annual.
That could be.
Wow.
Yeah. She's really good. So I actually liked it. I'm looking forward to reading more, and we'll see what happens. But for now, I thought, well, that was interesting. I like Kitty Pryde a lot. What's funny was that there was all that angst about her being a barista after Krakoa. Like, everyone's talking about that in the solicits. Like, she's going to be a barista, and somehow it was insulting.
I feel like that's a zeitgeisty thing that seems to happen a lot.
But she's not a barista. She's a bartender. Mm-hmm. She's slinging drinks. All right. Let's talk about Public Domain #8.
I had a thought when I was reading this.
So much pink.
No, and somebody, I don't remember, they wrote
somebody emailed us his whole thing about the pink, which is still fine, but I don't think it's being used well. Go ahead.
You know what? I tried not to notice it, quite honestly. Like, you had mentioned it, but I was
Kevin Feige was driving a pink sports car.
I'm not going to think about it. Now, what I was going to say is that I like this story. It is slightly getting away from the things I liked about, and I'm not sure how to tell you why. But what I do know is that for the most part, I realize that other than the Tattoo Brother, I don't like any of these characters.
All the characters are kind of annoying, yeah.
Yeah, like the angsty writer character, I'm done with that stereotype. I'm done.
Exactly like Chip?
Yeah, I mean, I get that's what he is, but just the sad thing, he's got a gambling problem, and it's like, I don't even want to see him get redeemed. I just want him to realize he is a failure and go away and let these other people work.
Well, maybe he's not, though. Maybe he's good at dialogue.
And maybe, but like it doesn't sound like it, and it's just it's a little.
Let's be fair. We've read the book. We know what they're doing. It's not a great book.
No, I know what I mean, like where this story is going to go. This was the one where I was like, when the two writers went out together, I was like, I don't like either of them. They're annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the idea is they're going to do this studio where everybody comes in to work together. And I was like, this is the most unrealistic thing I've ever seen. Because two of the people, the colorist and the letterer, can't do anything.
Right.
Until the other stuff's done.
Once you get one issue in, though, then there'll be constant work.
But like a letterer can do an issue a day.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it doesn't make sense. And I was in that way that's the most fantastic thing about this, because in the real world, it just doesn't make any, you wouldn't do it. Like a letter's, what are you just going to sit there for 90 days out of 30? Like it's.
Now the letters, they do the production, they do a lot more stuff than just.
I know, but either way, like I was just like, it's just.
I did like the letterer character, though.
I did too. I like both of the other characters and the colorist who's sick of your shit. That, and I also like the brother who's like, I think I love her. And they were like, you love everyone. He's like, it's true. I have a thing about it. I was like, oh, that's good. That was enjoyable. That was a realistic thing to me.
Well, now they're bringing the crime element in with the gambling problem, and they're coming to get his money from this job.
Yeah, I don't care about that either.
I'm still into it in terms of I want to read more.
Uh-huh.
That's just because I really like the behind-the-scenes stuff.
I do too. In a way, a lot of it is, this is the short section, a lot of it is adhering a little close to real things, and I kind of want, you know, remember when we did The Escapist?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that kind of, the story that happened there with publishing the comic was not, it didn't feel like it was just like, oh, I've seen these events and we're just sort of depicting them in a slightly different light. There weren't analogs exactly in the same way. And I think after Hey Kids Comics, I kind of like, well, he really did that the best.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, I'm flagging a little is what I'm telling you.
That's totally fine. And I would be interested to see how the modern day making of comics is or isn't different from the Hey Kids Comics. I did think it was interesting. We spent several pages on the intricacies of a character license. So they're really digging deep into what it is they can and can't do. So I
would like to spend more time with the other side, the Grant Morrison and Greg Capullo people, because at least that shit's over the top.
An angry Stan? Yeah.
I like the editor, you know, like I liked that part, the making of it, but this one got me a little in. I was like, this doesn't work like this. It just doesn't anymore.
Well, maybe somewhere it does when you've got a millionaire backer who wants to put it all in it. It's cross-gen, basically.
Mm-hmm. But that was before the internet, or, you know, no, the internet.
You're covering it on the internet.
I know, but it's not like today. She was like, you can check your Insta.
Someone with money could come in and say, I want to make a comic with all local talent, but I want everyone in the office together. That could happen.
Sure. But give her some more, do some more books.
Yeah. Well, they're just starting. Those are the books we want to talk about, but at patreon.com/iFanboy, as we mentioned earlier, every patron on the show gets to vote to add a book to the rundown. This week, it was slightly close for a while, but at the end of the day, Minor Arcana from Boom Studios, Minor Arcana #1 was the winner, written and drawn by Jeff Lemire with letters by Steve Wands. So this series is, from the words of Jeff Lemire, a ongoing series. From the materials that came out when the book came out, plotted at least the first 22 issues.
Wow.
He's planning a long run on this, he says.
Well, he's
how
followed through on that in the past.
He has.
So, you know.
He's one of the few guys that sort of stuck to that Vertigo model as best he could.
Yeah.
In the realities of the climate that exists.
That's impressive in and of itself.
And so I'm always happy to check out a new written and drawn Jeff Lemire book. I have so many good feelings about his stuff from the early mid-2000s, you know, Essex County and all that stuff. So I'm always happy he's still doing these kind of things. And I realize he's not someone who's going to like lose themselves in the big two because of his style, even though they tried their hardest to use him for a while. But his style just doesn't fit there.
I mean, he did pretty good superhero scripting.
He wrote solid superhero books for a while. They even let him do some art here and there, but he really sort of shines outside of that. Like Black Hammer, for the most part, was very good. And those other minis he tends to pop out that are fun, or he'll do an OGN, Underwater Welder, things like that. That's really where he shines. But here, what I'll say is this felt very familiar. And familiar in terms of like other books he's done, but familiar just in terms of story in general. And I realize this is very much a cold open on an ongoing series, but it's, you know, angry young woman returns to her small town to take care of her dying mother, hates everything, hates her mom.
I've met this character.
Yeah. Runs into old high school people, hates them, but has to step it up and run her mom's psychic business, and she's probably a psychic herself, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, I've seen this story. I've even read, I think, like Coming Back to the Small Town from Jeff Lemire.
Uh-huh.
But which is not to say I didn't enjoy this, but it did feel very familiar.
Yeah. I feel like this is like me saying it all week, is that like I respected it, but I can't say I really enjoyed it. And to be fair, I really haven't found a Jeff Lemire story that I've loved in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not this person doesn't have it. It just feels like it's not for me. And I don't know exactly why. I think it's just like a little bit like, I don't know. I don't know if it's not what I'm into comic, but it's just like a sort of a sad person returning to their shitty town where they're angry and don't. And I was just like, I don't want this right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's an exploration of negative feelings. And like, I understand that. I don't need to, I just, it's not what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I want something fun or funny or fantastic,
which isn't really his gig.
No, and that's fine. And I think when I was younger, I definitely related a lot more to this, but that's kind of not what I'm looking for anymore.
Right.
And even all the Black Hammer stuff, like it's all kind of down, like, which is, I can't hold it against him. That's been his thing.
Right.
But I don't like it. I do like that's it, Image now. He's still doing it. He's writing the story about the trucker and the FBI lady.
That's a pretty sad book.
I know, but I like it. I mean, it's all like the rules don't count until they do. Whatever the premise is on top of that, I find it very interesting.
Right.
And there's those two parallel stories going on at the same time. And I did find the bit interesting, where you're like, oh, she's going to be really good at being a psychic.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that it ended about a page too early.
Yeah. And it wasn't oversized. Not really.
Like,
a little bit oversized.
Like a thing happened and it wasn't really clear what it was. And it doesn't have to be. There can be an element of mystery, but I feel like I didn't get it at all.
No, it's completely obtuse. I mean, I think that's what I mean when I said it was very much a cold open. We don't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
She's giving a tarot card reading to one of her mom's regulars, and then she sort of has like a vision, and either has a vision or actually is transported to this hotel on the edge of the water. It's hard to say. It's probably a vision because it's all black and white, but it feels like she clearly has actual psychic powers.
Yeah, which is happening over in Zatanna. Like, we knew that was coming.
So we'll see. It's even hard to really say, because if this was a 6-issue miniseries, I'd have a much different opinion on it than knowing it's supposed to be going at least 22, if the market allows.
Then the next question is just like, all right, what is this going to do that's going to change it for me, over that time? Are we just going to be dealing with mom issues? I don't know.
It's hard to say. It could be anything. That's the thing about it. Since it's ongoing, it's hard to, if it was 6, everything's sort of set in stone, but what's being dealt with. But it's hard. I don't know. I really liked the one he did about the dad whose daughter had died and he was unmoored.
What was your pick of the week?
Yeah, I've liked his stuff a lot. I haven't read all of it. There was one recently, the one with the bugs. I didn't go past the first issue. Like, it just depends. I take his stuff book to book, but there was enough here at least for me to keep going for now.
Yeah.
Which is not to say I'm going to stay with it the entire time, but I'm at least going to check out the next one.
Yeah.
So, our 3 questions now. Question number 1, ratings. Ratings out of 5.
Ratings.
I'm going 3.75.
I love how we always have differing opinions. When I'm stuck in when I'm in the middle, what I'm doing is picking apart problems. When you're in the middle, you're picking out things that you liked about it. But we end up in kind of the same place. It's very interesting. I'm at 3.5.
All right, 3.75. Sticking with it. I'm going to read the next issue, if I remember to.
I probably will, because I think there is a germ of something here that was getting me interested, but I don't think they got to it.
Yes, he and Steve. Jeff and Steve.
Jeff and Steve.
And our new third question, would you have read it without it being the patron pick? Yes.
Probably.
I'd read it already before it was picked.
Although I had read the solicit, like the blurb, and I was like, it's like an alcoholic daughter returns to her hometown.
I mean, again, it's very familiar. It's very familiar.
Yeah. I don't necessarily like stories about people struggling with their sobriety either.
I understand.
As it is a thing that I understand and therefore do not need to have that much fiction about.
You very famously hate the David Michelini's Iron Man stuff.
I do love that, but I also read it when I was 11, so it's kind of a different deal.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Every patron gets to vote out a book to the rundown. Thank you for voting. But if you give it the $5 or higher level, you get a patron power live on the show. And this week's power goes to Etan Greenbaum. And Etan can turn any seat into an ejector seat. A little button in his hand, it appears. A little thing with a button, little
any
device.
seat.
any seat he looks at becomes an ejector seat. He presses that button and that person goes.
Now, the obvious question would be, is the ceiling included with this? Or just
They're
rocking?
gone. They're through that ceiling. They don't die.
The hatch doesn't open for them? I feel like it should.
Well, the thing is, the violence becomes cartoony. Like, they don't die
Right.
crashing through. They don't die from the fall, but they are gone. They are ejected from whatever they're in. Now, also, he can do it to himself.
I'm in my room right now, and I'm like, well, if
Yeah.
I get ejected, I've got about 4 feet. I'm just
Right.
going to hit that stupid texture and popcorn ceiling that I hate. It's going to shred me.
Well, that's where the cartoon violence comes through. You would just go
Mhm.
through to cartoon style, like Uncanny Valley, and then
I want to make a hole through it. That's what I'm saying, is I want
you
to be
want
shot.
to hold and be there. You want a reason to replace your ceiling.
No, it goes up in the crawl space. It's disgusting up there. I want like a flappy door thing to open.
Okay, that could be.
And then it then recedes back and closes.
That's fine.
And so that the only thing left in the room is a chair, the
That's
bottom of it.
That's on like a spring.
Right, with the big spring waving around out of the top of it. That's exactly what I was picturing.
So if Etan's in like a situation he doesn't want to, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm out. He can press the button on himself and he can go.
Oh,
But more likely, you're at the movies with Etan. You better shut the fuck up and stay off your phone, or you're going, you're going, and you're going, and you're going, and you're all out of here.
oh my God. That's amazing. Here's the only problem with that.
There'll be no one left in the theater
Well, it's making sure that you've got the right person.
because he's looking at them. He's looking at them.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, if you can't tell who's talking, obviously you can't. But if you can see,
Well, if he's having
You
a
know.
bad day, fuck it. You gone, you're gone, you're gone. I don't know who's talking. Noise is coming from over there.
that whole section, you're out. Etan Greenbaum, thanks for being a patron. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Every patron gets a
That's
vote
good.
for the
That was
rundown.
good. That's new. That's well done.
Let's do some emails. Scott H., our old nemesis, Scott H., Portland, Oregon. He writes and says, I've been thinking about this question since I recently started collecting issues of the NAM drawn by Michael Golden. I was always aware of Golden's work, but it's only been in the last few years that I've really gotten excited about studying and appreciating his pages. It's sort of inspiring to realize that there's always more to discover in comics. Are there any artists who've been working for a long time or possibly have even retired whose work you discovered, started loving, or appreciating only very recently?
Now, what's interesting is that last week I said, we got to get to this. And that way
Yeah.
I'll have time to think about how I want to answer.
And now you're in trouble. Now you're wishing you're Etan with a button and you could eject yourself out of the room.
I mean, on an audio podcast, I could just walk out. It would be exactly the same. So
The only very recently part is difficult because we're doing this pretty intensely
I don't
for a long
think
time.
you need to say very recently, but I think that there is I could, as an answer of like as an all-time thing, like I could say to you, okay, Jack Kirby. Like that is a thing that happened. Now, that's an obvious
You didn't
one.
get it in our younger days.
Yeah, no, and that's honestly, that has been a huge part of this journey for me. It was one of the most satisfying thing is being able to understand what it is about these masters that makes them great at it. And like the number of people who I would say that are countless. We just talked about Lone Wolf and Cub and Goseki Kojima, as I read through the book, and I knew it, but as I read it this time, because I hadn't looked at it in, a decade or more, I just thought, this person is a master.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes down to, there was really specific things that I could pick out now that I wasn't able to before, where we were talking about, like, there was that one page where the character's coming out of the bottom of the page, and crossing the frame, the sort of way that you always knew who you were looking at, the way that, when action kicked in, everything changed about it. It was like all the lights or the music changing if you were looking at a movie. The book explodes are actually a really good example of that. I think we've done this over and over again, is because we would read older books and then we'd have to be like, well, what was great about this back then? When we read about the death of Superman, you're like, well, what is it that, John Bogdanov did that was so great? Or Dan Jurgens, why did he stick around? And you find those things that they do, and we've had to spend so much time talking about why we like things that we had to understand it, at least for ourselves. It's like endless. I go back to like originally like the first couple of people who I realized that there was something special and understood why. Because for a long time when you're a comic book reader, you just go, I like what that looks like.
Yeah.
It doesn't really mean
Which is
anything
fine.
else. But early on when I first sort of learned what storytelling is, right? When I first understood
I'm
that
just
as a
saying,
concept.
Not every person reading comics needs to be as insane as we
No,
are. They can just
that's not
how
it.
the art looks. I'm just pointing it out to anyone
Right.
listening who doesn't. You can totally just enjoy the way comics look, and you can totally just enjoy the way a movie makes you laugh, thinking about the structure. Like, it's all fine.
And
You don't have
you're
to be
supposed
insane.
to. Like,
Yeah.
that is the point, I believe. But in our case, like, for me now, the enjoyment comes out of recognizing exactly those very things. When we read the Daredevil
Born Again.
and you hadn't gone back and really read that Mazzucchelli stuff since we were kid, and every page is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
You know, I know that those are like, but for me, I guess it's a lot of masters and then sort of revisiting them and being like, oh, I totally understand why people say this now.
This is very hard because, again, we've been doing this for so long, but there isn't anyone I can think of recently who I've discovered who I was like, oh, I didn't like them before, but now I like them now. The only one I think is similar to yours, not only one, the one I think of the most is because our old pal Augie de Blake Jr. doesn't let me live this down, is I did not like Jordi Bernay originally when he started drawing Jonah Hex. He was very cartoony, sort of very Italian. It didn't seem to fit in with the rest of the book. I think this first issue I very roundly panned. But then once I understood what he was doing and how he was doing it and what it brought to the book, it was just like the best issues outside of the Darwin Cook stuff of Jonah Hex or the Jordi Bernay stuff.
But also, I think that represents like sort of a maturization of you as a reader, sort of getting past the things that you thought you liked and being able to recognize sort of a different thing and why that works.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, but I've also always been an insane comic reader who, you know, when I was a kid, loved Silver Age stuff while I was also loving Image.
Yeah, and I don't think I was able to love that stuff until later.
I always loved Dick Sprang.
I think there was an issue, I forget. I know Rick Remender wrote it, and I know that Esad Ribic drew it, and I was like, I don't like this art.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I forget what the issue was, but that was stupid. And that's why I always try to say, like, I don't like it. I don't get it. It's not for me, whatever. I have a hard time. You know, I can tell you with objective things that people do wrong, but I can't pan style so much.
Right.
But I love that. I love something. My favorite bands, I usually don't like at first.
Right.
You know, I didn't like Radiohead at first. And now it's, you know, it's my favorite band of all time. So it takes time.
You got to ease into it.
I do. I need to know why I like something. And that's not normal.
It ain't normal.
I know.
Aaron H., maybe they're related, from Houston, Texas.
Oh, of the Houston H's.
The Houston H's. He wrote this in a while back, so it's going to refer to things as if they just happened, but it was a while back. You guys may not remember the question I asked a couple weeks ago about QR codes with comics. I thought QR codes could be helpful as a simple recap page. However, I feel like y'all were not sold on this idea. I respected the discussion. I let the concept slide. I thought maybe it's just a silly idea. But literally the next week, X-Men #1 had a QR code at the end. And then this week, Uncanny X-Men had another QR code at the end of the issue. So I sat back and thought about the issue for about 3 days. I quit my job and opened up an advertising consultancy firm where my ideas may be respected and appreciated. Oof. I am already well on my way to becoming a wealthy billionaire and may consider a donation in the future if you consider a retraction or apology that QR codes do have some, which is in quotes for some reason, merit. Aaron.
Double down.
I'm going to double down because, Aaron, go back and listen to the conversation. I did. I went back and listened to the conversation.
Nice.
You wanted QR codes to replace editor's notes and go to videos that would recap storylines or give character bios. You wanted them to replace the editor's notes. And I went back and listened, and there's only one point where we actually talked about the QR codes themselves, where I sort of offhandedly said, I don't even know where they would go on the page without covering up the art. But mostly we spent the entire time talking about the unfeasibility of creating all that video content. Mm-hmm. What was on the other side of the QR codes, what was the issue? It wasn't the QR codes themselves. Now, what Marvel's using the QR codes for now, which we talked about before, is at least in the X-Men books, they're doing these post-credit sequences that you scan the code and it takes you to those sequences. That's just more comic pages. So it wasn't the codes themselves, like I said.
And unless they monetize those quickly, they will go away. I guarantee you.
Well, the point is, though, we didn't talk about the codes themselves. We talked about what you wanted on the other side of it, which was a very expensive video production unit. That's what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. You know, codes, whatever. I don't see them on my copies, so I don't know how they look on the page. I'm curious to see how much they take up of the page. But other than that, I don't have a problem with the codes themselves. Our problem was with the video, not the code.
Yeah.
I am doubling down because that was not what we said. But
I mean,
congratulations on your way to becoming a billionaire in the advertising field.
I appreciate the full commitment.
Yeah. Quit your job and think about it. Everyone should be doing this. Aaron has raised the bar for everyone.
Listen, I may not agree with you, but God damn it, do I respect you. You know what I'm saying?
I picture Aaron. He's got his cowboy boots on. He's at Brasserie 19 having a cocktail. He's got his feet up on a table.
He's gotten done talking to the H family estate attorney. He's making sure that the trust is well.
He's winking at a lady. He's got himself a bourbon. Like, life's good for Aaron on his way to becoming an advertising consulting billionaire in record time.
But what I see happened is that all that was happening, and he had a couple of earbuds in, and he was just like listening, and he heard that, and he stood up immediately, and the course of his life changed at that moment because of whatever dumb shit he thought we said.
Which is great.
Exactly.
But how much better your life is now.
It's got to be way better.
I say go to El Tiempo and treat yourself.
It's a man who's spent time in Houston.
Thanks for writing, and we want to hear from you guys. Even if your last name does not begin with H, we will still consider your email for the show. Contact@ifanboy.com is how you write in. And put Mediasplode in the subject line if you want to get in
Just
on that
do
action. It's fun. We enjoy these emails.
Why wouldn't you do that? Just do that.
I mean, you got to think about your question. You got to quit your job and really dig deep into your psyche and into your inner child and your past traumas, and you got to think about it. And then you can write
But don't make a comic book about those traumas
Josh is not into it right now.
unless the symbolism is extremely distant.
Josh is just going through a thing, and he just doesn't want it right now. And that's totally fine. We're all beautiful snowflakes.
You could at any point say Josh is going through a thing, and it would be true.
So 2 weeks ago, we had our Booksplode book, which Josh just mentioned, actually. Lone Wolf and Cub Omnibus Volume 1. We talked about that. Classic of the genre, an all-time great. That was a fun conversation. That leads us into the now, which is September, where we'll have our Talksplode. Josh, still on track for that?
Wait, we're in the now?
Now.
When?
When is now?
Wait, did that happen?
It happened then.
When?
You just missed it.
Damn it.
Talksplode on track.
I'll say yes. I'm on the spot. So
Okay.
I'll just agree. I learned to do that at work.
We're having,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. We're totally almost done with that. Mediasplode coming up. I think we're going to review Beetlejuice if we all end up seeing it. That's the plan. And then we're supposed to do Watchmen Chapter 1 this coming week. That may not happen because we're having some scheduling issues. But if it does, it will. If not, it'll be bumped to October. And that's just the way it goes.
Some things will never change. Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun, dun-dun.
Now Europe.
Oh, I am?
Asia, Europe, Africa, Oceania.
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. That's 2 old people music references. Like older than me music references right in a row. You can find our library of 1,400. That's double zeros. Shows over at ifanboy.com. Wherever
it's a lot of shows.
It's obscene.
But you know what? This is going to sound totally insane. It's a lot of shows, but also sometimes feels like too few shows.
I don't have that feeling. I searched my soul and I went, nah.
We're 19 years in. It just feels like we have done more. I don't know.
I mean,
There's a few more if you count the ones that aren't. This is just the ones on the feed. There's about 50 of those make comics. There's a couple hundred video shows. So we're more closer to 2,000.
Yeah, but you don't want to be one of those shows that's just non-stop.
Cranking them out every other day.
3 times a week, 3 hours. There's nothing memorable about that. You can't go back to it. You can't do it. No, this is a life's work here. It's 1,400 of a life's work.
Think about that. Going to bury you with a thumb drive.
Hold on, I'm going through something.
Josh's gone through a different thing.
What do you think the space is on that? Like 1,400 of our shows. That's what?
It's a lot.
Yeah, I bet it's not as much as you'd think.
Right. It'll fit on a thumb drive.
Right. It'll fit like this. Like the 1 terabyte thumb drive has plenty of room left.
Oh, but also the video shows too.
Our life's work. Yeah, well, they compress a lot better now, too.
That's true.
It's the middle out algorithm. You can follow us at iFanboy Comics on Instagram to find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out. And just this past week, Connor going out there. There you go. You just picked it up.
I just got it.
Yeah. I can't remember anything, but those things I just spit out as I move.
I'm picturing the gestures. Middle out.
The finale of the first season is one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yes.
And I don't think it will ever change.
No.
And you may not know that Russ Hanneman, he of the Tres Comas, was also the son of Dick Barone of Barone Sanitation, who Paulie Walnuts kneecapped in season 6 of The Sopranos.
Wow, look at that.
Same guy. All the HBO people show up in other things. Yep. Connor and I are C.S. Kilpatrick and Jay Flanagan on Instagram.
Please subscribe. I was going to say, you subscribe.
you
subscribe to youtube.com/ifanboy.
Don't think about it.
You'll find our old video shows, the ones we just mentioned, as well as this show, which we post every week. And there was a brief discussion about posting all of our shows, and that quickly went by the wayside. Just this show. That's all we do. Please consider writing a review or leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. We appreciate that. That's an easy way to help us out, and it's one of the best things you can do. And that's it. I made it. I didn't die. I'm not crying. I'm not even really sweating that much.
You rallied because in the beginning, like as your body adjusted, it was like, is he going to be okay? And then you were like, I got this.
My body went from this is quite pleasant to this isn't uncomfortable, but it stayed there, never got incredibly hot, which is
the spirit took you. I think you were focused on your work.
It's the love of comics, really.
That's what it is.
And you.
I don't know why I'm laughing at that.
Well, not you.
It was really nice.
Listeners.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah. You can take
I thought it was like a genuine moment.
Well, no, you as well. I mean, come on.
Don't brush it off.
All right. Until next week, I'm Connor.
That makes me Josh. Thanks, everyone. And you.
And
Who am I
you.
talking about? I don't know. Figure it out.